Welcome to the NCLA GRS Help, and I'm an Accidental Government Information Librarian webinar series. Today we have Daniel Schuman, who's going to talk about Congressional Research Service reports. Daniel Schuman leads Demand Progress and Demand Progress Education Fund's efforts on issues that concern governmental transparency, accountability, reform, civil liberties, national security, and promoting an open internet. He co-founded the Congressional Data Coalition, which brings together organizations from across the political spectrum to advocate for a tech-savvy Congress. Daniel directs the Advisory Committee on Transparency, which supports the work of the Congressional Transparency Caucus, and is a fellow at Codex, the Stanford Center for Legal Informatics. His new website, Every CRS Report, recently won a Lahacki Award from the DC Legal Hackers. He is a nationally recognized expert on federal transparency, accountability, and capacity, and has testified before Congress and appeared on NPR, C-SPAN, and other news outlets. Thank you very much, Daniel.
Excellent. Let me see if I can actually share my screen. Excellent. So, hi everyone, I'm Daniel Schuman. Thank you for the kind introduction. I am basically a public lobbyist where I lobby for better access to information for all of us and all of you to make our democracy work better. Our focus largely was around building a modern democracy, although at the moment we're focused on trying to keep a democracy, which is always exciting. Today, as you heard, I'll be talking about public access to CRS reports, so I'm going to start just by briefly setting the stage for this. The earliest email that I could find regarding putting CRS reports online was from 1995. That was sent by some of my peers who are still working on the issue. We had some success last Congress where legislation was enacted into law that requires the Congressional Research Service to make its widely available CRS reports available to the public on its website, and they are still in the process of implementing that law. These are the general distribution reports. So first, it's always important, well, not always important, but it's always often necessary to start talking about terminology. There are three major flavors of documents from CRS. The first are CRS reports, which are the ones that we all know and love that are intended for a general distribution audience. They're made available on CRS's internal website. These are the things that most people think of. There is a second set of reports which are called Congressional Distribution Reports. These are reports that are basically identical to CRS reports that you know and love, but CRS does not make them available on their internal website or on the website they have publicly available now. These are the ones that they consider to be slightly more politically risky, so they'll send them to staffers who request them, but they don't proactively make them available. And there's a third set of reports, which are CRS memos, and these are the reports that are written in response to requests from members of Congress. And these reports are not made publicly available unless the member of Congress, him or herself, chooses to make them available. Generally speaking, many of these reports have become publicly available. They are published through committee hearings and other documents like that. But in terms of being systematically available to the public, private entities have made a point to access them and make them available for paying customers at 10 or 20 bucks a pop, but there hasn't been a great solution for systematic public accessibility to all the reports at once. There have been efforts to collect them and make them available. UNT, for example, has done so, as has the Federation of American Scientists. There used to be Open CRS, which was run by Josh Ruley for a number of years. A year and a half ago, our website came online, which is Every CRS Report, where we get all the reports from the internal congressional website and make them available to the public. And as of 6 or 7 months ago, there's now the Congressional Research's website as well. And James rightly reminds me there's also the archive. Or there are other collections that are available as well that are worth mentioning. One other thing that is also worth mentioning is that if you want a comprehensive list of the new or updated CRS reports, CRS's annual report to Congress, at the end of it, has a list of all of the new or updated reports. Sorry, all you see is me right now. I'm going to go to these sites in just a moment. Um, but they have a list of all the newer updated reports issued each year. The public-facing version of the annual report that CRS puts out, they were secretly truncating the end of it, so you couldn't get it, but we've actually published them, and I'm happy to point you to where you can find these annual reports that talks about the work of CRS. So with that, I'm going to go through 3 websites. If I'm doing this properly, and that is always a big question. There we go. So the first website that I want to talk through is the website from the Federation of American Scientists. I'm going to just very briefly go over since I know that you are all familiar with it. So this is the website from the Federation of American Scientists. This is one of the first public-facing websites along these lines that has that was created. Excellent. And what Steve and friends have done is that they've broken this out by topic area, so general national security topics. It's basically a long, list of reports, issue briefs, and other types of documents. So if you click on one, I realize that live demos are always dangerous. This is an InFocus, is one of the types of CRS products. They're available from Federation of American Scientists as a PDF. And they've broken it up by sort of the different issue areas. And below that are the annual reports, which I talked about before, where you can perhaps see prior reports. This is probably one of the most comprehensive sites that exist in terms of going back in time, although other folks like UNT also have really phenomenal collections. I know folks have seen this, so I'm going to move on. The next website that I want to show you, this is the one that we've built. This is everycrsreport.com. We have 15,025 CRS reports currently available to the general public. This includes all the reports that are currently available to members of Congress on the internal CRS website, as well as an excellent back set of reports from UNT. And we've been doing this for about 1.5 years or 2 years. I would tell you how we're getting the reports, but that would not be great, so I'm simply not going to do that. But I will give you an example of how this is a bit different from the Federation of American Scientists website and CRS's website. So here's a report that was recently published. This is from July 16th, so I'm going to open it up. So a couple things that are different here. One is that this is available as HTML and not just as a PDF. So you can read it, you can browse it, you can click on the links and link to particular sections of the reports. If you look on the right, you can download it as a PDF. You can download it as an EPUB, so if you want to read it on your Kindle. And we also show a revision history. So you can look and see how much of the report has changed. So let's go and click on this, which is 12% changed. And what we've done is we've done a black letter or redlining. So the blue indicates what's been added, the red indicates what's been changed. And you can go and see how the report has changed over time. This is particularly valuable because at least when I used to work at CRS, what we would often do to make management happy is we would add a period or a footnote to update the data on the report but not change the substance otherwise, which isn't particularly helpful to people to figure out whether it's something new or not. So we also threaded the report so you can see the current version and all the prior versions next to it, so that you can use a landing page and you don't need to be worried about whether you're looking at the most recent version of the report. Finally, we have broken this out by topic areas. So you can click on, unfortunately, categorize as a big topic. If you pick on American law, which is where I used to work, there is an RSS feed of the most recent to the oldest reports. The underlying code for the website is publicly available, as are all the reports, and we encourage you to take them and download them and make use of them. And I should note that we have all the different types of CRS reports. So it's everything from the R series reports to the legal memos. There's like different kinds. So we have all the various flavors. The final website I want to show you is the implementation from CRS. CRS's implementation is required by law. I helped draft the legislation. Their implementation has not been great. So this is their website. So if you want to look for a particular report, you can type it in. If you want to see a list of all the reports and undocumented features, you just simply click search. And it will load the results eventually. There are some very good things about this. They have faceted searching on the left. So you can search by the topic, or like here's a report by Charlie Doyle. So you can just see Charlie's reports. If you wait, there it is. So these are some of the reports that he's written, and you can also cabinet by time. It will tell you whether the report is an active report, which means it's live on the website, or whether it's archived. You can search by date ranges. So this is decent. If you click on a report, they make the report available only as a PDF. They don't make it available as a text or HTML file, even though they do have it in that fashion. This hurts some of the search results, and is also like you can't reuse and repurpose the reports for other purposes. And they will also show you prior versions of a particular report if they have it available. That's something that's required by law. But as you can see, the general sort here is chronologically from most recent to oldest. They do not have all the current reports on the website. They have all the R-Series reports, but they're missing some of the in-focuses and things like that. Their implementation is expected to be completed by the end of the legislative fiscal year, which is by the end of September, by September 30th. They should meet the legal obligation, which is to have all CRS reports that were available as of the time that the bill became law, that were available on CRS's internal website, available here. So that is the state of the current state of circumstances in terms of what reports are available. Or I should actually say, like, you can also look at the content types from their website, whether it's a report, post, testimony, and sort of other items. So you probably are thinking, well, what's missing? One of the big things that's missing is historical reports. CRS itself used to be the Legislative Reference Service, which has been around for I don't know, about 100 years. The CRS itself was created in the 70s, so there are 40, 45, 50 years worth of reports. CRS has digitized a number of reports in an archive that are called CRSX, but these reports are generally not available on CRS's website. We have been advocating for public access to the reports. They are often available through paid private services like Lexis or Westlaw or things like that. They will have a subset of those. But it's unclear whether they are comprehensive. If you want a list of the comprehensive reports that came out in a particular year, the best place to find that list is from CRS's annual reports, which CRS generally does not make available in full, but we've been publishing them. And I've got a wiki page that I can add to the chat window if you want to see what we have. And if you want to check your library collections, you may have some versions that I'm missing for the annual reports. We're always interested to see if we can find more of those annual reports, because they do have that list of all the reports that came out in that prior year. Other things worth mentioning that were required in the law is the appropriation status table. This is not the main focus of the talk, but I just wanted to mention this briefly, which is this keeps track of the appropriations bills and the cycle that are for each year. So we're in fiscal year 2020, so you can see the status of the regular appropriations, and here's the link to the, here's the vote, and here's the rule, and so on and so forth. So it is a good way to keep track of what's going on. This was required as well in the legislative language. This is something that was available on Congress.gov and previously on Thomas, back when that existed. It is also a useful resource that is available to you. So there are a million other things that I can talk about, including legislation that's recently become law or what's expected, the ongoing fights that we're having with the Library of Congress to make these reports publicly available in more useful formats and how they're made available, and so on and so forth. But I've already spoken for 18 minutes, which is longer than I had already hoped. And what I'm really interested in is what you care about. Questions that you might have, questions around legislation or how CRS is progressing, what their implementation looks like. or really anything else that's on your mind. So with that, I'm happy to either keep an eye on the chat window on the right or to answer questions from all you amazing librarians who actually make public access possible. So with that, I'm going to pause and be happy to have a conversation, answer any questions that you have.
Thank you very much. We have some chats coming in. So,
okay.
This one, yeah. What's missing with crsreports.congress.gov, and have you heard of any updates coming down the pike?
That's a great question. So there are two major things missing from, well, actually 3 major things missing from CRS Reports website, 2 of which should be available but are not, and 1 of which should not be available. They have most but not all of the reports that are currently available on the internal website. So they have all of these so-called R-series reports. These used to be the short form and the long form reports, which you used to see as RS and RL, but they don't use that terminology anymore, which basically was a demarcation of like 5 pages or 6 pages as sort of the cutoff between the two. But R is basically just means report, and like RL would be the long report, which is report long because it's backwards language, but whatever. And you also used to see the RS. Those should all be up there now. That should have been completed as of last month or the month before. But there are in-focus reports, there are legal brief reports, there are a bunch of other documents that are available on the internal CRS website that are not fully available on the public-facing website. How big that gap is, I don't know. I've been asking that question, but I haven't been able to get a good answer to it, except that they say that they expect to be completed with that by no later than September 30th of this year. The second thing that's not available on the website are historic CRS reports. So there's a number of reports that they've digitized, a number of reports that they have not digitized, but they do not make those available on their website. They say that they will consider looking at that in some fashion, but I suspect that legislative language is going to be necessary to force them to go and sort of dig into those archives. The third set of documents that are not available are both the confidential advice that's given to members of Congress, as well as the congressional distribution memos. We don't think that the confidential advice should be made available on CRS's website. If members of Congress want to make the advice to them available, they're certainly welcome to do so, but that's probably not the inappropriate use for this site. In terms of the congressional distribution memos, that is a different question. I don't have a good answer to that one. Although my tendency is to lean towards not necessarily making them publicly available unless the member of Congress, chooses to do so. So I think that's answered the 2 questions about the difference between R and RL series, as well as what's missing on CRS reports. Other questions that people have? So yesterday, the House of Representatives enacted a bill that I've been working on for the last decade called the Access to Congressionally Mandated Reports Act. This is a bill that would require all reports to Congress that are required by law to be made publicly available on a central website, in this case on GPO's website, with a couple of exceptions. One exception is if the report would be held back because you couldn't get it through FOIA. A second exception that if a member of Congress writes a letter saying who would receive the reports, if a committee writes and says, I don't want this report that comes to me to be publicly available, then they have to go and they submit the letter, and that letter would be public, that would go online, although you could still always go and FOIA the report. The value of this is that there are tens of thousands of reports to Congress that you can get in theory through FOIA, but as a practical matter, it's very hard to get and it takes a long time. Both the public, librarians, and members of Congress often have trouble finding these reports. So the idea is to put them all in one central spot so you can find them and make use of them. So that has passed the House. On the Senate side, a version of this has passed the relevant committee of jurisdiction. They are reviewing the limiting changes that were made at the request or requirement of appropriators in the House to see whether they can live with it. If they can live with that, it's my hope that that legislation will be quickly moved through the Senate. And then we will have an amazing new proactive disclosure law for these amazing reports from agencies to Congress. Oh, I see that there's another question. The question is, has there been any talk about permanent URLs or bulk metadata download for CRS reports or permanent, yeah. So there has been talk about that. There is I think there is hold on a second. We wrote a letter on this topic to them. Here, let me go back to, you should be able, I believe, to download the results. Yeah, so if you look here, there's bulk download results. So you can download the list of all the reports that were the response of this search as a CSV file, which I'll do right now so you can see it. And if I recall right, it does have a link to where the reports would be available. It doesn't seem to have actually worked because, of course, it doesn't work because it is a live memo. Let's see if I can. Oh, it doesn't work you can't do a bulk download for more than, I think, 1,000 reports for a reason that makes no sense to me. But if you do get a result, I believe it's under 1,000. Here we go. Cleverly named search results file. And if you open it, what you will get is a spreadsheet that has, among other things, in tab E, where the report itself is available. So if you can write a scraper, you can actually go and pull down the reports from the URL it's identified, and it has some of the metadata. So it has the product idea, like this is in focus. This is a long report in RL, which is terminology they don't use that much anymore, but they still have it sometimes. The date it was issued or updated, the title, the publication date, and then the version, which tells you how many times it's been updated. So this report here on terrorism has been updated 187 times. So you can write a script to go and pull them down. It's a little bit awkward. There's no API for this, but there you go. And James is offering the comment, it would be cool if you could both download a year. Absolutely. You can limit on the official CRS website based on a year. So if there's 1,000 or fewer reports from that year, you can download them by bulk. But since there's usually 2,000, you would have to probably break it up like in 6-month increments. There's another question, which is, what's a good example to show previous versions of reports to demonstrate edits? That is a great question. I would love to illustrate that. So this is actually a good example that we have on every CRS report. This is about the temporary assistance to needy families. There's a bunch of good examples. So if you look over here, November 21st, 2018, you can see that actually 2016, 31% of this has changed. So let's click on 31%. And this here will show you significant changes. So you can see where the monetary amount varied from 8.4 to 7.8 billion. Some of this is just, editing, but some of this is also like significant changes in the law. Looks like this one has a bunch of junk. So let's go to a slightly more recent version, the 2018 version. This might be a little bit cleaner. Yeah, so this again shows you how it's been updated from fiscal year 2016 to fiscal year 2017, and you can see sort of what's changing over time. All right, so here's one more question. Question from a colleague who doesn't regularly work with government documents. She mentioned CRS reports as a great resource when working with undergrads and is wondering about what you consider particular strengths topic-wise. That is a great question that I don't have a good answer to. I actually find that the nature of CRS reports has changed over time. So the older CRS reports, and those that are in by more senior analysts, tend to be much more analytical. They really dig deep. For updated reports that were regularly updated over the last 10 or 20 years, those are really substantive and thoughtful. They really dig deep. They don't just summarize the nature of what the arguments are, but they actually analyze them as well. Over the last decade or so, CRS has been dumbing down its reports. so that they tend to be much more descriptive of what people are saying instead of analytical. So there is value in finding reports that have been updated over a long period of time or that are written by senior analysts. Those tend to be better because the senior analysts tend to be able to push back better at leadership, to have more space to write things that are substantive, as opposed to the more junior analysts, where leadership, because out of fear that Congress will defund them for saying anything controversial, is basically making it so that it's hard for them to say anything that is substantive. Are there other questions? Covered everything? I can't believe it.
Sometimes it takes a while to type in. So.
Fair enough. Oh, and I don't consider it rude for people to submit questions while I'm talking. It doesn't bother me. So if folks... go ahead,
I had a question. I mean, you mentioned the subscription services that are in this field as well. And could you talk about kind of the sustainability, I'm not sure how to word this, but sustainability of the free access versus the subscription and kind of that dynamic between those?
Yeah.
A little bit.
So the reason we created our website for a different reason than Steve at FAS created his, or OpenCRS, or the libraries. Our purpose was to demonstrate for the Library of Congress, and more particularly for the appropriators and authorizers, that it is possible to build a good-looking, well-functioning, lightweight website to do this, so that the library itself could go and build their website. And that is indeed what happened. It cost us between $10,000 to $20,000 to build our website. CRS required a $1.5 million appropriation to build theirs. Our website is responsive design, so that like the screen size changes to big to small. You can download as an EPUB. The code itself is available on GitHub. You can do bulk download of all the reports. We automatically tweet out the reports. Like, what we did was intended as a proof of concept, because ultimately our website is not sustainable. Now, Steve has done an amazing job of sustaining his over, a decade and a half to 2 decades. I guess we could do 2 decades if we really had to, but I would much rather not. The real purpose for what we're doing is to provide a roadmap for, when you talk to members of Congress about what can be done, they have difficulty visualizing and understanding it. But if you go and you testify and you say, look, we built this website and it works great and here's how it functions, and you should do this because we shouldn't be doing it, that is often a better argument, and we found that that is often persuasive. So, like, the purpose of our site was really part of an advocacy effort to demonstrate what should be done. If we're still running every CRS report in 3 years, it means that I failed at my job. Like, the whole point is for us not to be doing this, for there to be an authoritative official source that is well-designed, that is effective, that is accurate, that is complete and comprehensive and useful, for everybody to have access to the reports and to be able to make use of them as they so desire. It is not for third parties like us to be doing it. So the other question was about the private sector services. I don't think that, philosophically, I think that government documents like these should be made available by the government. While there is great value in companies providing tools on top, here's a sentiment analysis, here's how things connect to one another, here's, like that, I think that's valuable. The underlying information, whether it's bill text and summaries or committee documents or CRS reports or reports to Congress, the raw data, the underlying information should be publicly available by default. And while I think that there is value integrating CRS reports into these paid services, they shouldn't only be available through paid services. You shouldn't have to pay for $20 for something that you already paid $100 million for a legislative agency to create. I don't think that makes a whole lot of sense. And a lot of our advocacy has focused on moving things over in that way. So other questions coming through. Duke Law has a phenomenal question, which is that reports on CRS, every CRS report anonymize the authors. Is there a plan to include the author's name in the future? Great question. So we anonymize the reports, authors, not because we thought that they should be anonymized. In fact, I thought just the opposite. But rather that one of CRS's arguments was that you can't make the reports available because then people will start reaching out to the people who wrote them, and that's going to create all sorts of problems, blah, 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 blah. And we can't fix that because it's super hard to do. So part of the tools that we built actually goes through the PDFs and scrapes out the people's names and puts replacement text in there. We also pull out the phone numbers and the email addresses so you can't call or email the authors of the reports, and the same thing is true for what we're publishing. Philosophically, I don't agree with our approach, but it was necessary for proof of concept to basically take away what I thought was a fairly weak argument that CRS was making. Now that CRS is publishing the author names, we may go back and republish all the reports with them. We have, of course, all the original reports untouched. The only reason we haven't done so is money. It just takes some money to go back and like reprogram it to do it slightly differently. And as long as they're being made available in an official capacity in that fashion, the future of every CRS report is sort of open to question. Like, we're trying to figure out what is our role in this ecosystem now that we have succeeded in getting an official source from the library to publish these reports. And that's something that we're figuring out right now. So I actually have no problem whatsoever in publishing the names of the authors and allowing facets to limit and search by that. It's just a matter of it hasn't been a priority to go back and change it. There is a second question, which is there was talk about CRS hosting the reports. Why didn't, instead of about having GPO hosting the reports instead of the Library of Congress? This was so how did this happen? I don't know the answer. I think that it came out of it was something that the appropriators decided, and at the last minute. And the idea was that if the Library of Congress publishes the reports, they should get credit for them. This is a way of demonstrating the value of the institution in generating them. Personally, I think that it would have been better to have them on GPO's website because GPO's website is a better search and retention engine. That said, the way CRS reports are being published, there is nothing to stop GPO from crawling CRS's website and ingesting all the reports as well. In fact, that would be something that would be great for them to do. I don't know whether they have any plans to do so or not, but it would be something that I would recommend that they consider, because that does provide a version of the Loxis concept where you'd have these reports in multiple locations. So GPO could certainly do that, and I think that would be great for them to do. And if there are developers out there that are not us that want to pull down all of our reports and all the ones on CRS's website, like, I think having multiple copies in multiple places is a great idea. Oh, good. Another question. The question is, I feel like this is like a one-man play. The question is, if there are older reports that aren't online elsewhere, how would these best be shared? Would the LOC site add documents it provided, or would it be another site? So that is a great question. In theory, the Library of Congress should do it. It's very hard to get them to do this. But the Library of Congress should take their repository of CRSX reports that they have, make them available. I think the best way to get the library to do so is to talk to the oversight committees and have them do this. Representative Quigley, who pushed the measure originally, has written to the Library of Congress asking for a report back on how hard it would be to go and put up the CRSX reports. The Library of Congress's response was not particularly responsive to the question. If there are folks that have database, so on our website, on everycrsreport.com, UNT was gracious enough to provide us with all of their CRS reports that they had in their database, and we took them and uploaded them and put them and indexed them, and they're available through every CRS report. So if other people have data sets of historic CRS reports, we're happy to include them on our website as well, particularly if they're digitized and you have metadata accompanying it. This isn't the best way to solve the problem. The best way to solve the problem is that they should all be available from an official authoritative source like the Library of Congress. But in the absence of that, if folks have repositories of these older reports, we're happy to go through and figure out how to ingest them and put them up on everycrsreport.com. And similarly, if any of you want to host an instance of every CRS report because you, for whatever reason, our code is available, you are more than welcome to take it and run your own instance. We do not want to be the sole or one of the major providers for this. This is not the role that we had ever envisioned for ourselves. So we're happy to have people use what we have to make it available, and so on and so forth. Just for the people who are watching this later, there is also some chatter on the side. UNT is saying that they are interested in digitizing older reports if anyone's willing to send them to UNT. The Archive collection is also would be glad to make reports available there. So it seems like there's many folks would be willing to go and help folks digitize if you have paper editions available. And we do have, like I said before, that checklist that you could look at from the back pages of the annual reports from CRS. So you could actually see whether you have a comprehensive list. And this is how we could know whether we have like the full year's worth or whether we're missing some. Are there other questions or comments that people would like to raise? And while people are typing, I would say that if you are interested in historic reports, and I know that I am, it is worth reaching out to your member of Congress or reaching out to, in the House, it's the Committee on House Administration or the Legislative Branch Appropriations Subcommittee. In the Senate, it's Senate Rules Committee or the Senate Legislative Branch Appropriations Subcommittee. The House Admin Committee and Senate Rules Committee have the ability to authorize CRS to make reports available on their website and to encourage them to do so. So a letter from them might be sufficient to encourage CRS to make, for example, the documents in CRSX archive available to the public. Any other questions or comments? I can do a song and dance too.
Thank you, everybody, for the questions and comments and interactions.
Oops.
It looks like we might have slowed down a little bit. Do you have a template letter?
Template letter? No, but it would be certainly easy to generate. I'd be happy to send you one. So while I've got all of your attention, I'll actually show you just, sorry, I didn't have it open in advance. I think you're seeing me. Let me share my browser just one more time. And I'm going to show you one other resource. And it'll just take me a moment to get it. And I apologize that you're going to hear me typing as I do so. So I have a GitHub page. And on this GitHub page is also a, shoot. See, this is why you shouldn't do things live. I have a wiki page here that I'll add into the chat window. Here we go. Congressional Research Service. Good. What we have here, so this is a ton of resource on advocacy around CRS, making CRS reports publicly available. At the bottom of it, here, I'm going to add this into the chat window now so that folks have it. Here we go. We have frequently used appropriations language, congressional budgets, the annual reports. So these are all the annual reports that I've been able to find starting from 2018, going back until 1975. I am missing 1981 to 1994. So if you have an old CRS annual report in your archive, this would be an amazing thing to have. And we also have all the full reports here. So I'll just open up one from 2016. If you ever read these, it's a ton of happy talk about how wonderful they are and how every year is better than the previous, which is not surprising for an annual report. But at the end, this broken up by subject matter. So here's the report number, here's the report name and the authors, and it goes on for, I don't know, 50, 60 pages. So if you want to know what came out in a particular year, this is a phenomenal resource. If you click on the full link for all the ones that we have links to, that will get you, so if you want to see the ones for 1995, I won't tell you how much fun it was to find this report. Sorry, we didn't do a great job scanning, so it's a little slow. Here's their 95 report, and at the end, you can see we did a great job scanning, right? But here is the report from 1995. Here's commemorations on flag desecration. At some point in theory, we should take these and turn this into a spreadsheet. Not high on my priority list because there's not a lot of time. I'm more interested in getting these missing reports. And CRS, by the way, goes back to 1970. So if you have reports from 1970 to 1975, that's helpful as well. Oh, sorry about my sound cutting out. Can you guys hear me okay now?
Yeah, I think we just lost you for a couple of sentences there.
Oh, I apologize. What I was basically saying is if you have the gaps in the annual reports, send them to me. Those would be super helpful, and it's a great resource to find all the reports that came out in a particular year. And similarly, if anyone's super interested in turning those into a spreadsheet, that would be a great way to help track it as well. Oh, final thing, since I've got the ears of 3 dozen amazing librarians, I wanted to put just sort of one thought into your heads as well. The way people often find authoritative legal information, and I realize I'm saying this to people who are experts on this topic, is they go to Google and they Google and then they go to Wikipedia. That's the first hit. That's where congressional staff and journalists and everyone else find these reports. And I just wanted to suggest that wouldn't it be kind of cool if there was a project to go through and take the contents of CRS reports, which are authoritative information, secondary sources, perfect for Wikipedia, and to go and enhance Wikipedia pages with the contents of CRS reports so that people are more likely to find and link to the authoritative reports that explain an issue instead of going to Fox News or CNBC or something like that. There is about 1,000 to 1,500 new CRS reports a year, which means that if you do 20 reports a week, you can get through all the new reports every year, every 50 weeks. So if folks have classes of students, this might be a really fun and interesting project as a way of sort of enhancing the value of information. That's the starting point for most people's research. And with that, any other questions, comments, concerns on CRS or on anything else? The question is there a way for libraries to incorporate CRS reports into their search features such as summon and so on? And do other libraries do this already? I don't know the answer to that question, so if there's someone else who may know the answer, you are more than welcome to chime in.
Theoretically, there should be a way to do that. I'm outside of that world right now, but if we have anybody James, if you want to come on mic and talk to that. Oh, yeah, and so that's why you were asking about the bulk metadata download. Oh,
and for what it's worth then, from every CRS report, you can download all the data in bulk. So you can get all of our metadata, everything that we've been able to pull out from it. It's not all the great stuff. So like, until we go back and put the authors in, for example, it's going to miss the author information, except the author would be CRS and not the individual author. But we will have the title, the date updated, and a bunch. So you could use our website to do that, and you might be able to use CRS's website for some of that stuff. There also may be value, like you were suggesting, I think, James, before. If GPO goes and ingests CRS's information, then that would be an amazing source to do that. And I should say, and I think I shared my screen properly. Maybe not. Let me do it one more time. Sorry, I keep turning it on and off. This is the, sorry, that is not it. Here we go. This is the bulk download page for every CRS report. So we've got a robust set of instructions on how to pull down all of our metadata and link to the reports. It's in well-structured JSON. That's about as far as I can talk about what it is, but it has the ID, the source, the date, the title, the summary, the various formats it's available, and to the extent that we could determine a topic or a version, that's available as well. So not perfect, but but this is a pretty good way to pull in some of the stuff that you might need. Okay. Other questions or comments? So while we're waiting, just one more point. There was a recent hearing on the Congressional Research Service before the Committee on House Administration last week or 2 weeks ago. It wasn't focused on the reports, but rather on the value of the services that CRS is providing, generally speaking, and what it's like to work there, the massive turnover at the American Law Division, and other problems. If you're interested in the operations of CRS, that is a good hearing to watch. And for those who are watching this later, there is some commentary in the chat which says that GPO may be working on collecting all the CRS reports and link to a news story from FDLP that somehow I missed on this. And another person, Renee, is pointing out that there are CRS reports in the results, but they're coming from Hein. But of course, you guys are more than welcome to incorporate ours to the extent that you can as well. So other questions or okay. So with that, I'm glad to turn back to our fearless leader, Linda.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much, guys, for such great questions. And
I'm so thrilled to have been invited to join this conversation. I mean, libraries are the cornerstone of our democracy, and the work that you're doing is amazing. So if you ever want to talk about this, or access to Congressionally Mandated Reports Act, bulk access to legislative data, or any of those other things, do not hesitate. I'm always happy to chat, to show you the little bit that I know about what's going on and to learn from all the amazing things that you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you. All right.